Good evening and welcome to our Meet the Candidate Forum sponsored by the Beatrice Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Kurt Spilker and I'll be the moderator for this evening. Tonight's forum is being videotaped and will be rebroadcast over the next 2 weeks on Channel 9. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for an introductory speech. After that, we'll move to the question and answer period. Each candidate will be limited to no more than 2 minutes to respond. Please focus on what you would do, not what has been done in the past. As a moderator, I'll ask follow-up questions if needed. If the audience has any questions they would like to submit related to business, please write them down and give them to one of our assistants. At the end of the question and answer period, each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for summation. Prior to the start of the forum, we drew names to determine in which order each candidate will speak. We will begin with Gary Barnard. Gary, your introduction.
Thanks to Kurt and the Chamber. As many of you know, I'm Gary Barnard. I've lived in Beatrice all my life. Like Mr. Byers, I was born and raised here, and I'm very proud to call this my hometown. I'm a lifelong member of St. John's Lutheran Church. I have 2 children and 4 grandchildren, and fortunately, they all live in Beatrice. I'm very proud of that, by the way. I do believe that in the future, I think with some of the, as Kurt said, but some of the past things, I think as a community, I think it's important that at some point in time, I think that we have to quit getting mired down in some of the things that in the big picture probably aren't so important. As we've heard previously, we have a huge problem with factories closing and businesses not doing well. And if we don't stop some of these outside forces on trying to keep our business and industry running, I think we're going to suffer in the long run. I do believe that we have some very good days ahead of us in this community. I don't believe any of us would live here and stay here if we didn't believe that. As I heard, again, Mr. Byers say, we all have different opinions, and sometimes we're not going to agree. But at the end of the day, in some form or another, there has to be some kind of a consensus, and we do have to get along. That doesn't mean we always are going to vote the same if you're on a council or the county board. It just does mean at the end of the day, at some point, we have to move our community forward in a positive light.
Thank you. Mr. Jason Schmalley, will you go ahead? I'm sorry.
That's all right. First off, I also would like to thank Kurt and Lori with the Chamber for tonight's presentation and having us invited. I, Jason Schmalley, have thoroughly enjoyed the past 3 years plus that I have served on the Beatrice City Council. First, I enjoy working with the working relationship among the City Council and the Mayor. We may not always agree, but we can respectively disagree and move on to the next issue. I'm excited about the current infrastructure improvements being made. While infrastructure is an important part, it is often overlooked until it breaks. The city has been successful in obtaining a number of grants to improve our infrastructure. Examples being the Carnegie Project, Downtown Revitalization Project, City Auditorium Energy Efficiency Project, Riverside Park Project, and the 2nd Street Project. These grants enable the city to stretch taxpayers' dollars and allow the city to do more for less. Second, I'm excited with the progress that has been made with the new Economic Development Group. While the process has taken longer than some would like, it is important that we put together a structure that will succeed long term. Finally, the city and the BPW have great group of employees. Their dedication and work ethic are unmatched. I feel our department leaders and support people, our employees, do a great job within our community for the betterment of our city. I truly feel our employees give their personal attention in regards to work ethic, preparing for the future, and utilizing maximum effort when it comes to cost and everything they do. We have done a number of positive changes recently. I've been very positive in the support of public safety departments, police and fire, for our continued and improving efforts in reducing crime and the preservation of life and property. We as a council have moved forward with improving camping and campground areas at Riverside Park and Chautauqua for our visitors. We recently finished paving the Grable Avenue from 6th to 9th Streets by Chautauqua Park. We approved improvements and funds to help support Prairie Playground and approved the remodel of the Carnegie Building for our future tourism visitors, along with many other positive steps forward.
Thank you, Mr. Schmully. Phil Cook?
Thanks, Kurt. And gee, you do sort of dress up nicely when you want to. I've known Kurt for all my life, and I think this might be the first time I've ever seen him in a tie. So
Take a picture.
yeah. So I want to thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for having us tonight. I'm Phil Cook. I've lived in Beatrice all my life. My wife works for the Homestead National Monument of America. I have 3 boys. One's in college now, and one's in high school, and one's in St. Joseph Catholic School. I was on city council for 12 years, had quite a bit of success while on city council, and I want to get back to that. One of the things I've always strived for, and my father brought that up, was if you're going to do anything, you need to do something good once a day for somebody. And what are you going to do for Beatrice today? When I first came out of school, I thought, out of college, that seems pretty quirky, but you know, if everybody in Beatrice would do one good deed a day for Beatrice, this would be an awesome place to live. And that's what I try to do, is one good deed a day for Beatrice. And I'd like to see Beatrice become more friendly with the other communities around. We need to become the big brother, little brother, the kindest, gentlest person to Lincoln, Nebraska. They have so much for us to offer for us that we don't pick their pockets. We should be up there talking to them, seeing what we can do with the economic development people out of Lincoln. There are so many times they have projects that we could be taken away from them, but we don't try. We need to become friends with them. I like to build relations. I like people. That's why I'm here. I want to give back. A little story of one of the reasons I decided to come back was a little lady came to the door and said, Phil, I know you're on city council. I've tried 3 or 4 times to get one of my city councilmen to help me with my project over here. I cannot get my neighbor to help me. Could you help me? Making a few calls, we were able to help her out. She was ecstatic. She didn't want to create any problems for her neighbor. She just needed somebody to help, and that's what I like to do, is help people.
Thank you. Our first question will start with Jason. The city has had several major community improvements in recent years. We have a new library, a new high school, water park, a new hospital, an airport expansion and remodel. What would you like to see next?
One of the projects actually I'm involved in is I'm on the committee for the library revitalization project right now. We have interviewed architects. We've selected an architect, and coming up here towards the end of May, we have a meeting where we will be sitting down with the architect and reviewing. And what that is, revitalization of the library is the basement area that's unfinished. And we're working with an architect and developing that. We have, I shouldn't say we have, the foundation has a fund of money that they would like to put towards that, or a portion of it. And we are working on improving and basically finishing the basement out, what would work for our future with technology and children and adults in the changing atmosphere in today's world. So that is one of the next closest things to my heart, is the committee I'm involved in right now with that. And that's we're putting a lot of time in it, and there's going to be a lot of effort into it and a lot of future thinking on.
Thank you. Phil.
One of the things I think we should be looking at is not so much a big glamorous project like the library, which I totally support, but it's to start looking at upgrades to the electrical systems in Beatrice, upgrades to the water system. It's not very sexy. It doesn't make a big wow, but being true and fond to the electrical side of the industry, Beatrice, just if we would upgrade our electrical systems in parts of this town is 100 years old. I think Ben Franklin put it up. It's himself. And if we could upgrade, just say with the engineer, if we up the voltages in town, we could save hundreds of thousands a year. If we do just upgrades like this, and there's funding for it through grants from the federal government, we could pay for all of our projects. We wouldn't have to go out and panhandle people for money. If we would just look on how we could upgrade our projects, our sewer system, part of it's wood. Did you know, people know that? You know, how is that ever going to last? You know, big trucks running down Highway 77, we see what happens living on the south side of town. We're constantly repairing Highway 77 because of the sewer problems. So if we look at upgrades like that, get everything ready to go, when it's time for a company to come in, we can say, yes, we can support you. We have the upgrades. We have the utilities to do what you would like us to do. So it's not really sexy or anything, but upgrades to our infrastructure, the electrical system, I think would go a long ways in making Beatrice more productive.
Thank you. Gary?
Kurt, that was a pretty impressive list. I don't know what we have left that can top some of those. Unfortunately, I had been involved with somebody that needed the services of our new hospital, and I hadn't been there when they opened it. And I have to tell you, I haven't seen a facility that is second to none. Our water park was a very nice park to begin with, and all these are nice amenities. And when I have new people come to town, I sell our town and our community. That's one of the things I use to sell it, to get people to come here and want to live here when they're looking for a home or moving here for their business. I wouldn't say I'd necessarily disagree with Phil on our infrastructure. I know our water department, talking to some of those fellows not long ago, I believe they're putting in so many, I don't know if it's a mile a year and things like that. And I know Pat Feist, and I think he does a good job. And I know there's always improvements, but I don't know on balance. I think we've done a pretty good job as a city managing those things. Those are the experts on it, and usually those of anybody that's in elected office, they're not the experts, and that's why we have hired good people, and so I trust them. Another example is what Steve Kelly did with the water line at the new hospital. Saved us thousands and thousands of dollars because he had the knowledge and the foresight to buy some of the water line and things like that. So I just commend our Board of Public Works. I don't question what they do. And his example was a couple years ago we had a big snowstorm, and I had to take my grandson to Lincoln on a Sunday morning, and we had as much snow or more than they did. We got out of Beatrice just fine, and we got in downtown Lincoln. You didn't hardly get anywhere. So I think that our Board of Public Works, with the number of employees and what we have to work with, I think they do a tremendous job.
Thank you, Gary. The next question will start with Phil. In 1888, and I said 1888, the population of Beatrice was estimated to be approximately 12,000 people. We're 124 years later, and we're essentially at the same spot. What do you see as the best way to grow Beatrice?
The best way to grow Beatrice, and that's a tough one because we are outside of Lincoln, Nebraska, and the best way to grow Beatrice is to try to keep our youth focus on Beatrice, to get them to go to school, go to Lincoln, Nebraska College, and find a way to bring them back to Beatrice. I'm at the age now, you're at the age now, we're not going to have kids anymore, Kurt. At least I'm not, you know. So we need to somehow bring the youth back to Beatrice. We tried, and it didn't work out with like knowledge marketing. It did not work out, and my wife's probably going to kill me for mentioning that one. But we got to try different things to where we can bring the youth back to Beatrice that would actually produce kids, want to live here. 125 years, we've been pretty stagnant. We need to find new and improved ways to develop and get outside of our box. We had our blue-collar factories, now they're shrinking. We need to find a way to get into the markets. Another example would be we need to market our park system and the water park, the trail system that I worked on when it first was started 16 years ago, and it took up until this year to get another piece. We need to find recreational things that we want to make people come to Beatrice. We all work very hard, and once the day's over, we want something to do, and if there's not recreational things, we're going to go look elsewhere. So,
thank you. Gary.
I would say when you brought that data up, it reminded me I've been doing a little research on my family tree, and my great-great-grandfather, George Washington Barnard, came here in 1894. So having thought about that, I can relate to that. When you talk about about our population not changing and not going up or down, well, the glass half empty or is it half full? I feel that we're fortunate to keep it where it's at. If you look around, you don't have to go very far to see smaller communities that seem to be kind of drying up. And so I think we have somewhat stabilized our population. I don't think there's any magic wand to increase our population. I think if we keep the positive outlook and we have a good community and we keep doing some things that we've been doing, again, you go back to the hospital and the water park and all these kind of things, I think as long as we can keep that stabilized. I know there's a gentleman in the audience that wants to do something in Beatrice in a pretty big way, and I haven't talked to him, but we'll visit about that, and I'm glad somebody wanted to come here and do something. And we need to assist them when they do that, and I believe the Chamber and this new Engage group, I think, are going to do a good job. I believe I know most of them, and they're all good people, and we need to support them. I think we're probably on a building process. We're stable. We've lost some industry, but I think if we've held our population, that does say something about your community. And so I think we just have to get the right building blocks and move ahead.
Thank you, Gary. Jason.
In regards to your question, I think one of the things, like Mr. Cook spoke about, was getting the 30 and 35-year-olds to retain themselves in Beatrice or attain them to Beatrice and bring them with families, with children, and have them learn and grow up, learning the Beatrice ways and the improvements we've been doing. The water parks and our park systems, the large grant we recently received for the trail system, and adding on to that and connecting the city and making it more family-oriented, I think, is a big thing. I just sat in an interview process last week for our city administrator position, and one of the questions I asked the gentleman was, and comment I made was, we're a city of 12,500 people. I don't see us becoming a city of 20,000 population. I think we can grow in small increments, but one of the ways I think we need to do that is working with our small entrepreneurs and not only going after the big box store, per se, in industry. We have Husqvarna, we lose hundreds of jobs involved in that. But then you have Neapco that does an expansion. They add 170 plus jobs. And I think we need to work with our small business owners also, people that are working out of their garage or in a very small office and maybe have 2 or 3 employees, and find ways to build their business and help them get up to 6 employees, which then, when they're buying materials from one supplier, it just goes down the line. And I think we need to work with those people just as much as our big industry, so when somebody does leave town, we don't have such a significant decrease in population.
Thank you, Jason. The next question will be for Gary first. Economic development has always been a topic of debate when it comes to the city. In your opinion, what should be the role of the city in funding economic development using tax dollars?
I think the city has had a track record of funding it for quite a long time. I believe and support in the LB 840 funding. I believe the community block grant developments can be a good tool. There is one thing, though, that I believe we need to do, and I've thought about this for quite some time. When somebody brings us a project, somebody like the gentleman here that wants to make solar panels or something like that, and we've had some failures, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we've got to stop that. I don't believe anybody on the current city council, whether I was on it, you were on it, or anybody else on it, has the ability to analyze some of these big propositions. I think we've had some local people that are able, and I bet would serve in an ad hoc capacity to help analyze these before the city council votes to just give the money. And I'm not knocking anybody on the city council. If I was there, I don't know anybody that can analyze all that. We can call on people that would help us do that. I don't think as a city council, I think it's probably a little bit above some of our pay grades. I'm not speaking for everybody, but I think we need help with that. And we have people in this community that could help guide the city council. You find a good conservative banker, an accountant, all kinds of those people. We've got them here that have started successful factories and businesses, and we need some guidance on that as a council. It's never should be embarrassing to say if you don't know something to ask somebody for help. And I think that is I think it's over $1 million in losses. So I think we need to, as a council, get somebody to help us decide whether these are worthy projects or whether they're not.
Thank you, Gary. Jason.
I agree with some of what Gary said in regards to the LB 840 funds. I think a very important part is the vote coming up for the passage of LB 840. on the ballot. That's a vitally important part that's going to be a $250,000 amount that basically is in our general fund and pulled and put in there and utilized. As far as funding with the economic development, I think it's great. In regards to Mr. Barnes' comment about getting it stopped, I think we have stopped it. We stopped it a while back. We've gone back to the drawing board. Have we got it back in full place yet? No. It's moving slowly, but absolutely it is very important. The problem didn't happen overnight. We're not going to fix it overnight. It's going to take some time, and one of the first things in rebuilding a relationship is with the county. Mr. Barnard and I, even in the past, have had discussions in regards to that. The county and the city need to get back to working together, and I believe we've taken huge steps in that right now with talking to the people involved with the new economic development group and getting it put together. It's an imaginary line. It doesn't need to divide the city and the county. We need to cross that line, and we need to work together.
Thank you, Jason. Phil.
City, county, we need to work on economic development. We need to put as much dollars in it as our pockets can possibly afford to give to it. We started with Engage back up again. I'm all for that, but we don't seem to know as a public what their goals, what their priorities are. It needs to be a little more transparent on what is happening with Engage. I'm all supportive of LB 840, but I'd also like to see if there's somehow we can set up through LB 840. I've always been told no, and I think that can be changed, that somehow we can set up an incubator using LB 840 funds for smaller businesses. You know, the mom and pops that want to start, as Jason said, with 3 or 4 people that need the money to get started with a low interest loan to actually get them out of the garage and start developing economic development on a small scale. Get a bunch of these moving forward. I would like to see if we are going to develop Engage, that private sector brings investments to it, and they stay out of it though after their investment. They let the Engage do what they are supposed to do. The Engage board does not invest in this committee. They do not give their money into this, because then they become a stockholder in it. So they need to stay as an advisory board to Engage and not give their money into it. That was some of the problems I think we had in the past, where people on that board, when we had economic development, invested in it, and then they felt entitled to have projects that they think would be good for them. So let's keep Engage going, find out what their structure is, and keep them separate from everybody else. Like I said, we need to find a way to bring small businesses up to and find a stake for how they can be supported. I've worked with Mr. Hoppy from the Lincoln with the advisory board for them, and he said point blank, Beatrice used to be a shining star in Nebraska, and now we're the black hole. We need to change that somehow to where we work with them and become their partners.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move to the summation part of the program. Each candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for their closing remarks. We're going to start with Jason.
Thank you, Kurt. Again, I want to thank the Chamber and Kurt for this evening's presentation. Some of the reasons that I feel that you should put a check mark or mark in front of Jason Schmalley on the May 15th ballot are: number one, I show up to meetings, I show up on time, and I come prepared. I'm not running based on past vendettas. I'm not a guy out running for multiple political offices. I have run for one and one only, and am seeking a second term. I, Jason Schmalley, was elected less than 4 years ago. I work well with other council members, the mayor, the city administration, and citizens of the community. I have put forth a very strong effort for improvements. I have liked the progress we have made, and I want to continue to serve and see the progress down the road. I'm not afraid to ask the hard questions. A lot of people don't want to ask the 800-pound gorilla question, but I will. An example is that when we had Nebraska Public Power here, the CEO sat right down here, and I asked him right about their tours they take with employees and spouses on steamboat rides in the Mississippi. 2 weeks later, he was at the BPW office hunting me down because he wanted to give me an answer, and assured me and promised me that would not continue anymore. I want to make sure our rules and policies match up and work together. We can't send mixed messages to our citizens and workers of the community. We have a set of rules don't need a set of rules for one person and another for someone else. I fully support economic development to the max. BSDC, for example, I fully supported them when they had issues going on out there. I had one-on-one contact with Claire Mahone, who was brought in from the coast, and had contact with her on an every weekly or every 2-week basis on an update with what was going on. I find a common ground amongst a diverse group and build from that common ground so everyone is working together towards a common goal. I believe my communication style has assisted me working with my colleagues and citizens of Beatrice to build a stronger community. So again, I would greatly appreciate your vote on May 15th.
Thank you. Phil.
I want to thank you for letting us come to this tonight. I want to give back to the city of Beatrice. I've been on many boards. I have many friends throughout the community that we can work together for. I had past successes. I was on the actual water park committee when it was first being put together. Then as it went through the bond issue and actual working with Mr. Wayne Bidding as we put the water park together. So I'm very fond of the water park. The Big Blue corridor going up to Lincoln to Beatrice, the trail system. The trail system around Beatrice was all things that was my brainchild 16 years ago that we've been working on for now. I too can show up for meetings. Any little puppy can show up for a meeting on time. I want to work and make the city more accountable. One of the things I'd like to see if I am elected is the city works more with in-town contractors and retailers first. They give a slant to the retailers and contractors of Beatrice. We can set it up to where it says best bid or most appropriate, to where we have a first shot at it. We're the ones that are going to give back to the city. The out-of-town contractors are not going to give back to us. I live in Beatrice. I want to make sure that my people in Ward 1 are representative. We have sometimes where a councilman is what I would call the Larry White syndrome. He does not really live in Beatrice, but comes to meetings and shows up and does his thing. So I will be here for you. I'm very reachable. Work manager for Cook Electric, so I can be reached there. Cell phones always available, so I will be there for you when you need somebody.
Thank you, Phil. Gary.
I guess when it gets down to it, when you run for elected office, I think it has a lot to do with commitment. I guess an example I use for myself is the fact that next month I'll be celebrating my wedding anniversary, and I'm married to my wife since 1973. Same lady. And so when I tell somebody, anybody, if they ask me to help them, if I tell them I'll do it, I'll do it. And if I tell them I can't, that I can't help them, then they're going to know that too. But if I serve the public, I do it with commitment. I put everything I have into it. And I believe my attendance at the county board meetings, I think I missed too. As Patty out there can tell you, I sat in on every single protest, about 1,100 of them in 4 years. I didn't miss any of those, and that's how I serve the public. I make sure that I do that. We have the ability to create a positive environment in this community to get other people to come and live here and bring their families. I think we have to move our city forward in a positive way. We can maintain and have maintained a fiscally sound budget, and we aggressively need to recruit new business and industry. My goal is to make our city government work with our citizens, not against them. I believe some good days are ahead of us if changes are made. And I hope you all do too, and I hope everybody watching at home does. If you're a resident in the ward I'm going to try to represent, I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. On behalf of the Beatrice Area Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to thank you for coming. Please remember to get out and vote on May 15th. Thank you.